In this video, I will show you how to solve absolute value equations. So the absolute value of a number is the distance between the number and 0 on the number line. So on the picture over here on this graph, I'm going to graph the distance between -2 to 0. And that would be this distance right here. I'm going to count the number of units. So from -2 to 0, the number of units is 2 units. And now the distance then between -2 and 0 is 2 units. And so we call the absolute value of -2, which is 2. So absolute value of -2 would be +2 because what it's really doing is counting distance units. So you essentially can ignore the absolute value. So even though it's 2 units to the left, it doesn't matter, it's just 2 units. Now what we're going to do in these next few examples is evaluate the expression inside the absolute value before we're going to actually count the absolute value. So before I'm going to do the absolute value bars, I'm first going to address 3 plus 8, and 3 plus 8 is 11, and the absolute value of 11 is just +11. And now 3 minus 8, if I simplify first, I'd get -5. But absolute value says you can kind of, in a way, disregard the sign. And so -5 to 0, the number of units is 5 units. Now, I don't have to simplify in my bars because inside my absolute value bars here, there's nothing to simplify, it's just -3. So the absolute value of -3 is +3. And I will add to it the absolute value of 8, which is +8. And so in this case, I get an answer of 11. And for the next question, the absolute value of 3 is +3. And absolute value of 8 is +8. And now when I subtract them, I get -5. For this question here for 5, the absolute value of -4 is a +4. The absolute value of 5 is +5, and now when I multiply them together, I get 20. If I simplify first, -64 divided by 8, I get -4 divided by 8, I get -8, and the absolute value of -8 is +8. Now inside my bars, if I simplify here, the absolute value here of 12 divided by -3 would be the absolute value of -4. And the absolute value of -4 is a +4. Now on the top, I'll simplify. Absolute value of 15 is 15. On the bottom, the absolute value of -3 is +3. And now I can divide. 15 divided by 3 is 5. So my steps then next here at the bottom of this page would be for solving an equation involving absolute values. So this is just more or less simplifying, but now solving, it says consider the equation the absolute value of x is equal to 5. Now the absolute value of what values of absolute values of what two numbers are equal to 5. So I want to talk to you about this. How many solutions are there to this equation? There are 2 solutions. And I'll explain why with a graph. If the number 0 is where we count distance, then there would be 2 numbers that would have 5 units distance away from 0. So if I count distance to the right, the number would be 5. But if I count distance to the left, it would still be 5 units. It just doesn't matter which direction you go. And so the 2 solutions are the absolute value of 5 is 5, and the absolute value of -5 is also 5. So there are 2 solutions there. So The question here says, consider the equations below and state the number of solutions. So how many answers would be 0 units away from 0? Well, only one number, which would be the number 0, is 0 units from 0. So don't go anywhere. Don't go to the right units. Don't go to the left units. So if you have an absolute value equal to 0, you're going to get one solution. Now, if I say the absolute value of x is equal to a number, how many solutions are there? And my answer is none, because if 0 is where I want to go, and if I travel negative units, that doesn't make sense. And so whenever you see absolute value equal to a negative, your answer is there is no solution. But if you're solving for an absolute value that equals 0, you'll get one solution. And the absolute value equal to a positive number will actually give you 2 solutions. And I'll show you more examples on the next page.